Did you ever believe that the most powerful duets were unbreakable? That when two voices mesh so perfectly, so soulfully, so completely, they were somehow destined to stay together forever? Well, what if I told you that one of the most heartwarming acts in Britain's Got Talent history, Jonathan and Charlotte, quietly went their separate ways? And no one really knew why? Not at first, at least. Hey there. If you've ever rooted for the underdog, teared up during a talent show performance, or just love a good "where are they now" kind of story, you're absolutely going to love this one. Because today, we're taking a deep, intimate dive into the inspiring and surprising journey behind Jonathan Antoine and Charlotte Jaconelli. From the unforgettable moment they stepped onto that BGT stage and stunned the world, to the subtle unraveling of their musical partnership that left fans heartbroken but ultimately inspired. Their story is one of talent, loyalty, pressure, growth, and something we don't often talk about in these fairy tale narratives: change. Stick around because the truth behind their split isn't scandalous or bitter. It's human, and it just might change how you see not only them, but every viral duo that's ever risen into the spotlight too soon. Let's rewind the tape to 2012. The world hadn't yet met Jonathan Antoine and Charlotte Jaconelli. They were just two regular teenagers from Essex. Jonathan was 17, Charlotte just 16. Both were musically gifted but painfully shy in very different ways. Jonathan, with his long curly hair and heavy-set frame, had battled bullying for most of his school life. He often sought refuge in music, opera of all things, which had become his emotional outlet, his passion, his lifeline. Charlotte, meanwhile, was more confident on the surface, bright, bubbly, and with a voice more suited to musical theater than opera. But she, too, was navigating the uncertain waters of teenagehood, still figuring out where she belonged. Their fateful pairing didn't come from years of friendship or family connections. It started as a school assignment. Their music teacher, recognizing their individual talents, encouraged them to sing together for an end-of-year performance. That performance turned out so well that someone suggested they try auditioning for Britain's Got Talent. They entered almost on a whim, just for fun, without really imagining what might come next. And then came the audition, that iconic audition. As they stepped out onto the massive BGT stage, you could feel the tension. The crowd murmured. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, visibly skeptical. There was a kind of awkward silence in the air, the kind that says, "This probably isn't going to go well." Jonathan seemed visibly nervous, almost hiding behind Charlotte. The camera zoomed in on their faces as they explained who they were and what they were about to perform. The Prayer, originally sung by Andrea Bocelli and Celine Dion. A tall order, right? Then the music started, and just like that, magic. Jonathan's voice hit first, rich, operatic, resonant, the kind of voice that doesn't just fill a room, it fills hearts. Seconds later, Charlotte joined in with a melodic warmth that supported Jonathan's intensity with grace. Together they created something almost ethereal. You could see jaws drop. Amanda Holden's eyes welled up. David Walliams whispered something. In disbelief, Simon Cowell's eyebrows rose higher with every note. By the time they finished, the audience had erupted. Standing ovation. People were cheering, crying, completely overcome. The contrast between their shy, uncertain entrance and the sheer power of their voices created this emotional whiplash that people just couldn't get over. It was a moment. A real, raw, unforgettable moment of pure talent triumphing over judgment, and then came Simon's comment, something that, even years later, people still bring up. He turned to Jonathan and said, "You are phenomenal, Charlotte, good, but Jonathan, you are unbelievable." He then suggested, quite plainly, that Jonathan consider going forward without Charlotte. He said it would give him the best chance at winning. The room tensed. Everyone turned to Jonathan, waiting to see what he'd do, and Jonathan, still only 17, did something most grown adults wouldn't have had the courage to do. He looked Simon Cowell straight in the eye and said, essentially, "We come as a package." He chose loyalty. He chose friendship. He chose her. And in that moment, Jonathan and Charlotte weren't just great singers anymore. They were national sweethearts. Their friendship, their support of one another, their unity. That's what truly captured hearts around the world. They didn't win the competition. That year, the top prize went to a dancing dog act, Ashley and Pudsey. But Jonathan and Charlotte didn't need to win. They'd already won something greater, the love and admiration of millions. Overnight, they became household names. Their audition video went viral, eventually racking up over 100 million views. Offers rolled in, interviews, record deals, press. Tours. A debut album titled Together dropped in 2012 and shot up the charts. It was a beautiful blend of classical and contemporary, just like them. But with the spotlight came pressure. People assumed they were best friends, soulmates, possibly dating. In truth, they were still getting to know each other. Fame had forced them into the roles of a duo before they'd even had a chance to really decide if that's what they wanted long term. Over the next year or two, they tried to make it work. They recorded a second album, perhaps Love. They toured. They gave interviews where they always emphasized their support for each other. But behind the scenes, their artistic visions were beginning to drift. Jonathan, always passionate about classical music, started leaning more and more into opera. He studied vocal technique, took private lessons, and began to envision a future singing Puccini and Verdi on world stages. He wanted to grow, to be taken seriously in the opera world, to stretch his voice to its full potential. Charlotte, meanwhile, was being pulled in a different direction. She loved musical theater, Broadway, the West End. She wanted to act, perform, and explore more popular music. Her interests were veering toward solo projects that had little to do with operatic areas and more to do with telling emotional stories through modern ballads and theatrical songs. It's not that they didn't get along. It's not that they had some dramatic falling out. It's that, like many young people, they were growing and growing in different directions. And unlike most people, they had to do that growing under a microscope. In 2014, they made the announcement they would be pursuing solo careers. Fans were crushed. The headlines buzzed. Was this Simon Cowell's influence finally coming true? Had Jonathan decided to ditch Charlotte after all? But the reality was much simpler and much kinder. This was mutual, thoughtful, respectful. A natural evolution of two young people stepping into their individual dreams. Jonathan released a solo album titled Tenore, which showed off his now much more developed and polished operatic voice. It was a massive hit both commercially and critically. People began comparing him to the great tenors of the modern era. He wasn't just the boy from BGT anymore, he was a serious artist. Charlotte signed a deal with a new label and released her solo debut Solitaire, which combined elements of pop, classical crossover, and musical theater. It was elegant, personal, and allowed her to carve out her own identity, one not defined by standing beside someone else. Over the years, both Jonathan and Charlotte have continued their artistic and personal evolution, each embarking on their own path with determination, humility, and a deep connection to their craft. For Jonathan Antoine in particular, the journey post-Britain's Got Talent has been transformative, not just in terms of vocal mastery and career success, but on a deeply personal level as well. After parting ways with Charlotte, Jonathan wasted no time in diving headfirst into a solo career. It wasn't simply a matter of riding the momentum of his BGT fame. Jonathan understood that to be taken seriously in the world of classical music, he had to work harder than ever before. Fame can be fleeting, and he knew he needed to earn his place in an industry where technical precision and emotional resonance matter as much as, or even more than, celebrity recognition. He began intensive vocal training, working with world-class coaches to refine his technique, expand his range, and control the power of his voice. Though he had always possessed a natural gift, a richness and maturity that belied his age, it was in the years that followed that he truly honed his skills, transforming from a talented amateur into a professional tenor capable of tackling some of the most demanding pieces in the classical repertoire. Jonathan's first solo album, Tenore, released in 2014, was a bold declaration of his ambition. The album featured operatic areas and classical pieces that showcased his refined vocal abilities. It wasn't just critically acclaimed, it was a commercial success, debuting at #1 on the UK classical chart. For many, it marked the moment when Jonathan Antoine ceased to be simply the boy from Britain's Got Talent and became a respected classical artist in his own right. In the years that followed, Jonathan released several more albums, including Believe in Going the Distance, each reflecting his artistic growth and increasingly nuanced emotional expression. He became a familiar face in the international classical music scene, performing in concert halls from London to Los Angeles. Invitations poured in to perform at major charity galas, cultural festivals, and even royal events. His concerts became known not just for the power of his voice, but for the sincerity of his presence. He didn't just sing, he connected. Audiences often left his performances visibly moved, as though they had not just attended a concert, but experienced something deeply personal. As his fame spread, Jonathan used his platform to speak openly about something many performers shy away from: his lifelong struggle with anxiety, depression, and self-image. For most of his life, Jonathan had battled with self-esteem issues related to his weight and appearance. From a young age, he had been bullied, made to feel lesser than, and encouraged to hide in the background. Music had always been a refuge, a way to express what he couldn't say out loud. But even after becoming famous, those internal battles didn't simply disappear. Instead of hiding his struggles, Jonathan chose to share them. In interviews and social media posts, he spoke candidly about his mental health journey, the therapy sessions, the dark days, the challenges of being in the public eye when you don't fit the mold of what the world often expects a celebrity to look like. He refused to be reduced to a viral success story. He wanted people to know the real him, flaws and all. This vulnerability struck a chord with many fans. He began to receive letters, emails, and messages from people around the world who saw themselves in him, not just in his voice, but in his honesty. People who had also felt unseen, unheard, or unworthy found hope in Jonathan's resilience. He wasn't just a performer anymore. He was a symbol of self-acceptance, a reminder that your worth isn't measured by the way you look or how many likes you get, but by the way you make others feel, and the way you fight to live authentically. Jonathan also started to speak at schools and special events, often invited, to talk not just about his career, but about the importance of mental health support for young people. He became an ambassador for kindness, not in a superficial sense, but in the real, gritty, sometimes painful work of learning to be kind to yourself. He emphasized the power of art, especially music, as a form of healing, and advocated for more resources for mental health in education and the performing arts. Musically, Jonathan continued to evolve. His voice, once described as remarkable for someone so young, matured into a robust, emotionally complex instrument. He experimented with new material, blending traditional operatic areas with more modern crossover interpretations. In Going the Distance, released in 2020, he explored more cinematic themes and even collaborated with a live orchestra, producing music that felt expansive, cinematic, and deeply moving. His rendition of Go the Distance from Hercules became a fan favorite, not just for its technical brilliance, but for its raw emotional truth. It felt like Jonathan wasn't just singing the lyrics, he was living them. During the global COVID-19 pandemic, when live music came to a standstill, Jonathan didn't retreat. Instead, he embraced digital platforms, live streaming concerts from home, and interacting with fans online. These sessions were often informal, intimate, and filled with moments of vulnerability and warmth. He performed songs by request, shared stories about his journey, and created a space where people could feel connected during a time of isolation. These moments reinforced his reputation not only as a world-class performer, but as a genuinely kind and compassionate human being. Even as he gained international recognition, Jonathan remained grounded. He often credits his family, especially his mother, for keeping him centered. He has spoken lovingly about the people in his life who never let him forget where he came from, who loved him before the spotlight, and who continue to support him, not as a celebrity, but as Jonathan. What's perhaps most striking about Jonathan's continued rise is how he has managed to remain true to himself. In an industry that often demands reinvention, compromise, or conformity, Jonathan has consistently chosen integrity. He has taken the long road, the hard road, but the one that feels most true to his heart. And in doing so, he's inspired countless others to do the same. His story is still unfolding. With each performance, each new project, each heartfelt conversation, Jonathan Antoine continues to prove that real artistry comes from within, not from perfection, but from presence. His voice may be his instrument, but his soul is what truly resonates. And as he continues to grow, both personally and professionally, one thing is certain. Jonathan Antoine isn't just singing for applause anymore. He's singing for something much deeper. He's singing to heal, to uplift, and to remind us all that there's extraordinary strength in being exactly who you are. Charlotte has kept a lower public profile but has steadily worked in the theater world. She's taken on stage roles in productions like Into the Woods and West Side Story and has continued to train and perform, expanding her range as a singer and actress. Her commitment to her craft is obvious in the precision of her performances and the depth of her interpretations. And what about their relationship now? In interviews, they both speak warmly about each other. There's no bitterness, no he said, she said, just gratitude. Jonathan has said that without Charlotte, he never would have had the confidence to even audition. Charlotte has said that she'll always be thankful for the journey they shared. And yes, when asked about a possible reunion, Charlotte has cheekily said, never say never. So maybe one day we'll hear their voices blend again. But even if we don't, that moment on the BGT stage, that breathtaking performance of The Prayer, will always be there. And maybe that's the beauty of their story. Not every duo needs to last forever to be unforgettable. Sometimes people come into your life at the exact moment you need them, walk beside you for just a little while, and help you take that terrifying first step into the unknown. Jonathan and Charlotte helped each other do that. And they helped millions of us believe that yes, even the most unlikely people can create something truly extraordinary together. So what do you think? Should they have stayed a duo? Or was it better that they each followed their own path? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you even a little, don't miss our next video. It's about Susan Boyle, another BGT legend whose story took a turn nobody saw coming. Her rise to fame was just the beginning. Make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more untold stories behind the talent, the triumphs, and the truths we rarely hear. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind. And remember, not every duet is meant to last forever, but some voices echo long after the final note fades.